Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, I would like to welcome our guest tonight, and I hope you come back, and I hope you join. But there is a guest here tonight who has come every night to Toastmasters. He is the most unwelcome guest. I would like to tell him to get lost. And you might have heard of him. His name is Mr. Fear. Now, I remember Mr. Fear when I was a little kid. I looked for his cousin under my bed before I went to sleep to see if he was there. But tonight, I looked behind the lectern to find him. Where is he? Fear was here. But tonight, Toastmasters, what I want you to think of is not a night of fear, but a night without fear and without blemish. My speech tonight is called Sack Fear. Spear the fear. The amygdala has to be shielded, and I'll go over that later. Conquer fear with the cortex, the frontal lobe, and keep speaking publicly. Now, before we talk a little bit more, we need to do a little bit of psychology and a little bit of brain surgery, so if you don't mind. Dr. Judith Orloff, in her book on emotional history, talked about two huge fears. And the first fear that most people have is public speaking. So the fear, Mr. Fear, comes with the territory. The second fear is death. But it's a very close second. Now, Seinfeld, the comedian, said, most of us would rather be in that coffin than being the one to deliver the eulogy. Now right here, I just want to come up a little bit closer to y'all and just show the brain here. Now basically what I want to talk about tonight is the amygdala. Now that is the area that has flight or fight. And I don't know if any of y'all have ever experienced that, but I have certainly experienced that in life and in Toastmasters. The frontal lobe of the cortex is the cortex right here. The frontal lobe is the most important part of the brain, right here. That is our executive center, and that's what we need to focus on instead of on our fear of flight or fight. Now, Dr. Jeffrey Spencer, he is a coach to the stars, and he talks in his book, Turn It Up. He speaks of that little voice in our head, and he says, I don't really know where the origin of that voice is. Perhaps it is all the negativity ever said to us in our life, and we just never let it go. Well, my take on it is that little voice in your head is a scaredy cat and really, really wants you to succeed. And I'll go over that in a minute. The other thing that he talks about is that we need to breathe to get out of that flight or fight. So I'd like the people that can stand up, if they would stand up with me. All right, just relax. Okay. And I want you to go like this. Breathe in. And breathe out. One more time. In. Breathe out. And say these words. Sack fear.
Sack fear.
Thank you. You may be seated. Now, we all have our little quirk, so to speak, as far as trying to eliminate Mr. Fear while we're speaking. And some things that I do, if you sit over and watch me sometimes before a speech, I'm breathing, just breathing. and I breathe and I pretend I'm playing the clarinet just to relax. And then another little thing that I do, and I learned from my father, is that I whisper 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I try to relax. Another expert, Dr. John Ratty, said that there's also, in that flight or fight area of our brain, is also freeze. Now, freeze isn't the loser of the three. Freeze is something that our ancestors many years ago, when they were being stalked by a predator, instead of on the verge to run, they froze to figure out which way they're going to go. Now, I experienced that in Toastmasters, a little freeze. I was giving my little speech, going right along, and then all of a sudden, and granted, this was my second speech in my second go-round of Toastmasters. I was a Toastmaster 15, 16 years ago, and so my second speech, I start looking at my visual, and I can't speak. So I didn't know what to do. I had this fear, like I just wanted to just walk out of the room, call it a night, see you. So what I started to do was I wanted to get back into this frontal lobe. I started coughing. And I said, excuse me. And then I snapped out of that primal fear that I had. And I got back to speaking. Then the amalgama kicked in again after my evaluation. I wanted to fight my evaluator afterwards. But then I came around. I always figured there'll be next time. Now, there's voice in many areas of other people's lives. It's not just Toastmasters that have this weird voice. I'm sure many people have heard of Jack Nicklaus. He's one of the greatest golfers of our time. He wrote in this book, "It is also common for a golfer with a chance to accomplish something special in his career to convince himself that he is playing over his head, that his success cannot last." Well, of course it can last. So save such post-mortem thoughts for the clubhouse. Tell yourself that your worries are ridiculous, that you have played well so far, and that there's no reason why you cannot keep up for the last few holes. It is your day. Or better yet, Toastmasters, I say tell that voice to come chat a little later after you won the blue ribbon. Now, Harvey Penick, he was the guru of golf. He writes in his chapter In the Mind, "A simple thing to remember but hard to grasp is, if you want to change yourself, you must change how you think." Now, is Mr. Fear still here? Because I have something to say to you. I would like to read to you what Rainer Maria Rilke wrote to a young poet. And Mr. Fear, this is how I believe you are. How should we be able to forget those ancient myths that are at the beginning of all peoples? The myths about dragons that turn into beautiful princesses. Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us beautiful, brave. Perhaps everything terrible is in its deepest being something helpless that wants help from us. Sack. We need to spear the fear. The amalgama, we need to shield it. Then we need to conquer through the cortex, our frontal lobe, and we need to keep on speaking in Toastmasters. And lastly, Shakespeare has said, "He has no hope who never had a fear." That said, Mr. Fear, maybe you can return next week with a change of attitude, and we can knight you Mr. Hope, Mr. Toastmaster.
All right.